All right, everybody, I'm going to get started. Just to let you guys know, I am recording this so we can use it as training for anybody who's coming in from the cities to help us, or for a couple of the National Guardsmen who aren't on the call right now. So this training is about teaching you guys how to prepare for a little bit of a pivot that we're going to be doing, which is that the hotline is, as you're now aware, I'm going to be helping out with the vaccine registration process for the communities that we've already been serving. So as you probably all know, our call volume is down substantially from really November when we were at our peak. So we haven't been getting that many calls, and I think that the Beat COVID initiative wants to kind of make sure to take advantage of the existing infrastructure we have with our great agents who are able to answer the phone in multiple languages to service the residents here. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to step in and help the community get vaccinated as quickly as possible. So right now in the cities of Pawtucket and Central Falls, there's limited community vaccines. So vaccine sites that are set up by like the community for, you know, certain qualified populations. And it's possible for those folks to register online for the vaccination clinics. However, the people who we're targeting, you know, people who speak other languages primarily at home, or people who are 75 and older, have more trouble accessing online signups, and maybe don't even have email addresses, things like that. So that's where we come in. Basically, the cities are going to go out to these populations and say, we have a vaccine clinic for 500 vaccines available this weekend. Here's the link to sign up. If you're unable to use the link to sign up because you don't have an email address or access to a computer, you can call the Beat COVID hotline. So that's kind of like what's going on in the community and the role that we're playing. Before we kind of get into the nitty gritty, any questions about that, like our purpose? And as we're going, you can interrupt me, or you can just type a question into the chat if that's easy for you. Any questions? Okay. All right. So first things first, I'm going to share my screen here. I can remember how to do that. Can you all see the Beat COVID-19 helpful information for call takers document?
Yes.
Yes, from Word.
Perfect. Okay.
Yep.
And Tim, I think I saw you log in. Just to let you know, we don't have Josepha, I don't think. We've been reaching out to her, and not sure her phone's in service. I texted her and stuff. So if you could reach out to her, that's great. But we are recording the session. Does it say I'm
Okay.
still? All right.
Yeah, I'll follow up with her. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, so so the way we're gonna get you guys information about what clinics are available is to use the shared resource. So you're gonna be using this again. Maybe you haven't used it in a long time because you probably haven't needed to. But you can see right now it's up to date. So it's got the normal links that you might have used in the past up at the top, but then right below that, it's gonna list the active clinics that you can actively sign people up for a vaccine at. So you'll notice there's 2 for this weekend, which means that we are confirmed to begin taking calls tomorrow for this, for some last minute requests or some last minute availability that the state made for people in Pawtucket. So this is just saying there's a clinic on Saturday the 30th from 1:30 to 3:30. Military time will trip me up a little bit, but some of you will be more familiar with it, at the Nutaconconut Center, which is in Providence. So we have a total of, you'll see a total of 360 vaccines between these 2 clinics. There's a link, and I'll put, each time I put like a new clinic, I'll put the qualifications for that individual clinic in there. Any for Central Falls are going to be easy. It's any Central Falls resident or person working there. But I'll make it explicit each time. So for the 2 this weekend, it's people who are 75 years or older, and they have to be Pawtucket residents. So not people who work in Pawtucket, but people who live in Pawtucket. And as you'll see in the training, we expect them to be able to prove it when they arrive for their vaccine. And I'll put the vaccine type, which in this case is Moderna. Also in this section, you'll see the vaccine FAQ from Rido that you've all read, and the link to the CDC's FAQ about the vaccine, which is here. Both of those are good resources for you to maybe even like kind of read once a week, just so you're totally familiar with the FAQs, because people are going to ask you questions on the phone, and we want you to be able to address as many of those questions as possible. We're actually going to go over the FAQ at the end of this call. Right now, we haven't made any changes to the phone system. So right now, people will call the 855 number, get the normal information from Hugo, and then be sent right to any of the agents who are logged into our system. The idea is for Monday to change the phone system a little bit so that when people call, they make their language selection, and then they decide from there, do they want to schedule a vaccine or do they want to schedule a test? Everybody who's on this call, who's an active agent in our system right now, will be taking both types of calls simultaneously. So like Therese, your extension will be able to take all English calls, either going into the testing queue or into the vaccine queue. That makes sense to everybody? So it'll be like normal, except you're going to be open to both types. The reason we're doing that is because we will probably at times have people volunteering from the community, from like the city municipal offices, who will be able to log in using one of our extensions, but we can limit them to only getting questions about vaccine signups so that we don't have to train them on all the other stuff that you guys know how to do.
So will the incoming calls say, like, you know how it says like Spanish or English, will it say vaccine or COVID testing?
That's a great question I don't have the answer to yet.
Okay.
But I think you'll be that would be helpful, and hopefully it will do something like that. But I would recommend that you answer the phone in sort of a similar way, like, "Hi, this is Beat COVID Hotline. I'm Chenda. How can I help you?" And then you'll know right away kind of what you need to have at your fingertips to satisfy that resident's request.
Okay.
Yeah, you're going to need to have everything kind of open and accessible throughout the day. Other questions just about that stuff before we dive into filling out one of these forms?
Kind of unrelated, but Josepha is here. She's the loner 90. She can't change her name. Okay.
Yeah, she just wasn't responding to my shouts for her, but I'm glad she could hear. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's click through to one of these links. So this system is called PrepMod, and this is the system that the Rhode Island Department of Health is using to sign people up for vaccines. We've also agreed to help a local health center with their vaccine registration process. They actually use another platform, which is super exciting and convenient and fun. So we'll train you on that platform when the time comes, but actually it's better that we're just kind of training for now on one platform, because we really don't know how to make it so that you'll be able to easily decide which clinics to sign people up for. In this case, it's fairly easy because they're at the same place. So all you would be doing when you take the call is saying to the person, are you available from 1:30 until 3:30 on Saturday, or are you available from 8 o'clock until 10 o'clock on Sunday? And that would be the way you determine which one to sign them up for. So I clicked on this one. So then we would just go ahead and start basically asking them the questions on here. So if you look at the training document I sent you, I actually did provide a little section of like before the form. So you answer the call, how can I help you? yes, we're making appointments for people who are getting vaccinated. And then you ask whatever the qualifying question is for the relevant clinic. So are you a resident of Central Falls in this case? If they say yes, then let them know. You're going to need to be able to show paperwork when you arrive at the site, like a photo ID or a utility bill or something with your name on it and address so that you can prove you're a Central Falls resident. If they say no, then you can ask them if they work in Central Falls. That's a qualification at this time for the Central Falls vaccination clinics. If they say yes to that, then mention they'll need to bring a pay stub with the address of their work and their name on it, proving that they work in Central Falls. If they're insistent that they live in Central Falls but don't have that type of information, escalate that up to me and Hugo. I think the city's trying to help people, especially if they're undocumented, to be able to get vaccinated, even if they are having a difficult time proving that they live in the city, okay? But if they don't live or work in Central Falls, they don't qualify, you just end the call and tell them to hang in there until they're part of a qualifying population. Then you'll click on the appropriate link once you decide where to send them. And you'll just say to them, you know, so here's the trick. You can't actually make the appointment until you fill out the whole form. So basically when you're talking to somebody, you say, I'm going to have availability at some point between whatever the hours of the clinic are. Are you available at any point? Because we're going to proceed and I'm going to give you your appointment once we fill out the form. So that's obviously not a good design, but we don't have any way around that. So just let them know that they're going to have to kind of be available for any time. And actually, as you're working in the system, you'll kind of be able to see as you're making appointments what's available. So you should be able to give people kind of a hint of what times might be available. So then you start filling out the forms. Just collect their information. I'm going to actually fill it out so that we can go through the process. So their race is these options here. Ethnicity is whether or not they're Hispanic. Occupation, this might be like just good to read through it. Today I'm a corrections officer, but you can see there's not that many options. So just have them tell you what they do and then put it in. And you know, if you're not finding it quickly, just go to other, but try to fit it into one of these categories for the sake of the state's data. So for specific organization you are affiliated with, this is a stupid question. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, but just put wherever they're testing. You can just copy and paste it. And we're just going to leave it at that. There's my email address, my work phone number. Instead of giving you my home address, I'll put in Colette's address. City, state, zip code, all required. Language is required. And you don't have to put county in, but you can. The language, though, brings up a good point. For those of you taking calls in Spanish, it would make sense if you're doing the call in Spanish to click into this, which will change all the questions over to Spanish. And hopefully we didn't lose all my information. Of course we did. Didn't know that was going to happen. Sorry about that. Bear with me for a moment.
Wait, John, how did that happen?
I clicked over from Spanish and then back into English.
Of course.
Okay, none of this matters. I'm not going to finish the document, so yeah, there's a good tip. Click that before you proceed. At least this is being recorded and will be shared for all people in the future. So then save and continue once you get that basic information. At this point, you're going to say the vaccine is being provided by no cost, at no cost by the government. Your insurance will be charged for the cost if you have it, but you don't need to pay. So then you'll just put their insurance information in, type of insurance, insurance company name, member ID. I don't know why it won't let me click into any of these. No, that's seems to be broken at this moment. But fortunately, it's not required because you can select no insurance. So that's what we'll select for now. But just pay attention to the fields here: insurance company name, member ID name, group number. And then policy holder name. So if they have their policy under somebody else, you'd put that in. Otherwise, you'd put their name in. Policy holder date of birth, policy holder relation to client. So that's if they have their insurance, like, you know, under a parent or under a spouse or something like that. Don't bother asking them for images of their insurance, and then save and continue. So this is where the rubber meets the road. At this point, we're going to ask you guys, oh, I should mention one more thing. I skipped over this looking at my notes. So on the last page, there was a field for email, and it's a required field. If they have an email, great. Put that in there. Make sure it's 100% accurate, because email is how these people find out, first of all, their confirmation of their appointment. But second of all, it's how they find out about when they're supposed to sign up for a second dose and given the opportunity to do that. So you got to make sure that the data in that case is 100% accurate. If they don't have an email, type in noemail@email.com. And basically what we're going to do is when those second doses are available, we're going to pull a report from the system for anybody with the email, noemail@email.com, and then give them a call and register them again. And to address the question in the chat from earlier that I think was from Jamila, so the system will ask whether it's their first or second dose, but actually the registration process is exactly the same, and you do each one distinctly. So it would make a lot of sense to sign people up for 2 appointments at the same time, but that's not how the system has been designed by the state. So, so for each time somebody's making an appointment, they'll have to go through this whole process. And keep in mind, most people are, or a lot of people are going to be filling these out online by themselves. We're just getting the people who are going to have difficulty doing that. Let me just check my notes, make sure I've said everything I'm supposed to say. Okay, so at this point, what we want you to do is read every question word for word. Don't take any shortcuts. Don't summarize. If somebody asks you, hey, what does that mean? You can try to explain it to them, but we want you to stick to the script here as much as possible. And that's to protect us from somebody saying, oh, when I called, they said, oh, this, you know, isn't really that serious, or I was confused by the question because they said something other than that's on here. So just say what's on here just to, you know, not confuse anybody. So is this your first or second COVID-19 vaccination? Let's say it's my first. Are you pregnant? You don't have to read. If you answer yes to this question, please speak to your medical provider before you come to receive your vaccine, unless they say yes. So if they're saying no, then you just, are you pregnant? No, just click it and move on to the next question. Have you had a severe allergic reaction? For example, anaphylaxis, trouble breathing, to any vaccine or injectable therapy, or a history of anaphylaxis due to any cause. I want you to read it word for word, just like that. So practice saying anaphylaxis. And then again, only if they say yes, do you need to read what's in parentheses. I won't read every question in full. You'll be able to just kind of like look at this as you're signing people up. Once you do it once or twice, you're going to be totally familiar with it. But this is about, so we don't want people who have had severe allergic reactions to vaccines taking it. So if they say yes, they're out. We don't want people who have received another vaccine in the last 14 days taking the vaccine. So if they say yes, they're out. They got to wait, you know, a little longer. If they're under 16, they don't qualify for the vaccine, they're out. If they've tested positive for COVID-19 in the last 10 days, they're out. If it's their second dose, you'll click yes, and it gives you a place to put the date. If they have a bleeding disorder and they're taking a blood thinner, or they're taking a blood thinner, I should say, they're out. So same thing there. If they're breastfeeding, then they should speak to their doctor first. If they call and say, I have spoken to my medical provider, you know, like for the pregnancy one and this one, then you can, if they confirm that, you can complete the registration with them. Same thing here, allergic reaction to any component of the vaccine. You can read these components here. I have access to a more detailed list of the components of the vaccine if somebody asks. So that's something to escalate up to us. So if not, they're out. Have you received convalescent plasma or monoclonal polyclonal antibody infusions for COVID in the last 90 days? So this is a treatment that they started using really in the last few weeks. And because it's effective for a while, they suggest that people not get vaccinated if they've used that within 90 days. So those people would just wait a few months and then sign up for the vaccine. If people are sick, they should speak to their medical provider. If people are taking their second dose, then they have to say which one they took. Hopefully it's Moderna, because that's what we're offering in this case. And then if they're in quarantine, they don't qualify. Okay, so this is going to take you some time. This is going to take you probably 8 to 10 minutes per person to go through this all in detail, make sure all the information's correct, and then, you know, put it all into the system. The good news is we're basically done. So once we save and continue here, we are brought to the consent page. So I do have some instructions for this. Once you get to the consent page, where am I here? Okay, so under 4B 5 says at the end on the signature page, read the full consent form details. So I want you to actually, unfortunately, read this. So this is a consent for the vaccination. You have to sign here for you or your family to be vaccinated by signing this form, blah, blah, blah. Read through all of that. The EUA fact sheet is the fact sheet for emergency use authorization. And we're obviously not going to give that to them because we don't have access to them. But they will receive it at the site. And then once you've read the consent, say, at this point, I have to put in your signature. Do I have your authorization to sign your name? And if they say yes, then you click type my full name. You type their name out. Here you would just leave the date of today. You'd select self for relationship to patient. Make sure their name's in here. It gets pulled in automatically. If they click self, save and continue. This is a summary. If you've taken your time and confirmed all their information with them, then you don't need to go into detail on this. Like, you don't have to review all these health questions, but I would recommend that you review date of birth, name, email address. Because again, that's how they get a hold of people. And if not email address, then phone number, just to make sure we can reach them to get them signed up for their second vaccine. Like I said, you don't need to review this. If anything's yes, you've already bailed out. So these should all be answered no. And then save and continue. And then this is where you make an appointment. Fortunately, it's very easy. All you have to do is click the radial button next to their appointment time, and then stay on this page. So while you're talking through all the appointment details with the resident, stay on this page. So you might want to have this open and say, okay, your appointment is on January 30th, this Saturday at 3:01 p.m. And the site is located at the Nuda Center at 650 or 675 Plainfield Street in Providence at 3:01 p.m., you know? Because once you click continue, all this disappears and you won't be able to access it again. So once you're making the appointment, stay on this form. Make sure they have all the details. Remind them to, and this is all written down here, remind them to bring proof of residency or work in the cities, whatever they need to qualify. Like I said, review the location and site of the appointment, or time and site. Tell them to arrive 5 to 10 minutes earlier, but not any earlier than that. We don't want a line forming. And then you can tell them if they put in an email address that they're going to get an email confirmation with their appointment time, the address, and it has links to cancel or change their appointment. If they don't have an email address, they have to write what you're telling them down and hang on to it. We're not going to contact them again for a confirmation. So, it's kind of like with testing. Once you give them the appointment time, that's it. That's their appointment time. That's the last they're going to hear from us. So they just have to show up. If somebody calls and says, I made an appointment, but I need to cancel, that's something to escalate up to me and Hugo. Okay, that was a lot, just a lot of talking on my part, but it's actually a fairly straightforward process based on how great of a job you guys have been doing over the last handful of months. I feel pretty confident that you're going to be able to pick this up quickly and be able to help the residents right away, starting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. But before we move on to FAQs, are there any questions?
Yes, I do have a question about the pregnancy part. You did mention that if they talk to their OBGYN and if their OB said that it's okay for them to get tested, do we still follow with the application even though it's a yes? Because I know you said yes, we can't really, if they do answer yes, we can't move forward with the application.
That's a good question. Yeah, I hadn't totally thought that through yet. So yes is the answer to your question. So in fact, I was wrong. There will be possibilities of there being a yes for them in their health questions and still submitting the form. Basically, they're going to ask them when they get to the vaccine site, okay, you answered yes to this question. Have you consulted with your OBGYN? But so just make sure you're following through with what it says on the form there. So that was a great example. If they're pregnant, they say yes, you are going to check yes. But then you'll say, have you already consulted with your OBGYN? If they say no to that, then back out of the registration system. Don't register them. Tell them to call their OBGYN and then get their blessing for them to be vaccinated and then call back and start over on the registration process. Did that make sense? That's a good question and a good catch, Jamila. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
John, when you say back out of the form, can we just close it and start it over again, or how would you do that?
Yeah, I would just close the window and for the next appointment, just click the link again. And by the way, I wrote this down in here, but we are not allowed to share the link with anybody externally. So you're only clicking that link to put in hotline callers information, somebody who qualifies. In fact, there are issues, I think, when you start to share the link around, but that's definitely not something that we're allowed to do. Other questions? Did it look straightforward enough? Do you guys feel confident about being able to do that?
Yes, I did have, excuse me, I have one question. As far as like the insurance information, what if they don't have all of it? We just take whatever they have and just continue, correct?
Yeah, so having insurance is not required to get the vaccine. It's just if they have it, then the provider is going to bill the insurance company. So if they have insurance and they say, yeah, here's my provider name, but I don't have the rest of the details, put in what you got. And then, if they want to figure it out at the site, they can. But don't back out of the registration process just because they don't have their insurance information handy.
Okay.
Other questions? Chenda, does this all seem straightforward enough?
Yes.
Okay. Esther, you feeling good?
Yep.
All right. All right. So we'll go over the FAQ. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Yeah, so basically I'm just going to be going over what I wrote down in the training here, just kind of quickly. So right now, tomorrow, when you get in here, the phones might be ringing off the hook. I have no idea. We could be getting hundreds and hundreds of calls tomorrow. So we're just going to do the best we can. We'll have support. I you know, we've offered to help, but we have made it clear that we cannot be the only solution to people registering for vaccines in Pawtucket and Central Falls. You guys have done an incredible job, but we, you know, that would be a little bit too much. There's like almost 100,000 people in both cities. So tomorrow, the city is only going to be they're not going to be like putting the link on Facebook or anything like that. So tomorrow they're going to be reaching out to very specific groups in the city, like to the senior center and to like assisted living, and letting them know to publicize this to their residents. So, so tomorrow for these two clinics, it's like just for Pawtucket residents 75 and older. This was a surprise, actually. This all came about today. Originally, we were supposed to start taking calls on Monday because in Central Falls, they're a bit busier because the qualifications in Central Falls are that any resident of Central Falls can get the vaccine. So Noelle could sign up for one of the clinics that we have available. I believe she said she was a Central Falls resident, and get vaccinated. Have you been vaccinated, Noelle?
No, I haven't, but I probably will now.
Yeah. So so Monday morning there'll be another link, or there'll be a different link here, and it will say wherever the location is, the timing, the qualifications, which is any Central Falls resident or worker, the vaccine, which should be Moderna, and the number of vaccines. And then people from Central Falls will be calling us and trying to make appointments. But I think it'll be, you know, I think about half the people right now are signing up online, and about half the people are needing to call somebody and chat with them. So like I said, no cost, but if they have insurance, the insurance will get billed. There's no wait list outside of wait list for specific clinics. So when you're making appointments, you'll be all getting a sense of it because you'll be actively making appointments, kind of what's available, like I said. But once the appointments are full, there's the option all the way at the bottom to add them to a standby list. And that's because inevitably there will be no-shows on the actual day of the clinic. And then they'll, you know, if somebody doesn't show up for a 9 o'clock appointment, they'll wait maybe 2 hours, and then they'll call somebody from the standby list and say, okay, we have a vaccine available. Can you come down and take it? So it's worth adding people to the standby list, especially, you know, if they're the first 20 people or something like that, 20, 30, 40 people. There are 2 vaccines available in the US right now. Pfizer, which is active in Rhode Island, but it's mostly, that's the one they're kind of using for healthcare workers, first responders, that sort of thing. And then Moderna, which is the one that's available to the community. The vaccines are not live viruses. They are made of messenger RNA, which replicates one of the building blocks of the virus, so that when it's put into your system says, oh, that's a foreign agent. I'm going to produce something that's going to basically fight that protein. And so the first dose kind of teaches your body, okay, I know how to fight that. And the second dose says, I know how to fight it, and I'm going to go full scale against this. So actually, I think it's been reported that people tend to have a higher amount of symptoms on the second dose, because by then your system is fully trained to attack the protein of the thing that like pops into your cells to teach your cells how to make the virus. You know, I think you all know this, it's a 2-dose series for both of the current vaccines in the US, 21 or 28 days apart. There's a 4-day grace period, so you can actually take the second dose on day 17 or 24. The doses have to be of the same product. So if Therese got the Pfizer vaccine, she needs to get the second dose of Pfizer vaccine. And then optimal immunity is 2 weeks after the second dose. So, you know, in general, the advice to people is once you get the second dose, you still have to follow the protocols that are out there of wearing a mask, of social distancing, of washing your hands frequently, everything like that. And the reason for that is that we know that the vaccine prevents people from getting quite sick from COVID. But what we don't know is whether it totally prevents transmission. And as it is, it's only 94 or 95% effective, which is incredible for a vaccine, but it's still possible to be vaccinated and end up getting coronavirus. So that's why that recommendation is made. But the point I'm making is that even still, like, you got to let people know that they're not going to have that full profile of being as immune as they're going to be until 2 weeks after they get their second dose. Let's see what else we got here. We don't know how long that immunity is going to last, but we do know that that immunity is probably better than natural immunity from getting the virus, which is why people who have had the virus, as long as it wasn't recent, qualify for the vaccine. Let's see what else. There's a list of symptoms here, but first I'll say, I don't know if this is on here. The vaccine will not cause somebody to test positive for coronavirus. It may, if somebody were to take the antibody test, which not many people are taking these days, but if they took that, then it might come up. But if they go down to Pine Street site and get tested in a PCR and they test positive for COVID, it's not from the vaccine. It's because they have the virus. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Just in terms of symptoms, because that actually might be the thing that you get asked the most, is because the vaccine creates an immune response in the system, it's natural for people to feel a little sick after getting it. In fact, it's better if they do, because it means that it's definitely working. So they should expect possibly to feel local pain where they get the shot, a little swelling or redness, to feel a little tired, have a headache, muscle pains, chills, just kind of feeling crappy, And like I said, it's more common that people have slightly worse reactions to the second dose. All right. I know you've all already read all that information, but it's always better to duplicate things to learn them properly. So that's why I went through all that, even though it was a little tedious. Any questions?
The only question I have, and this may not even be applicable to the patients, but I guess for my own knowledge, is there a reason as to why the Pfizer vaccination is mostly being given to frontline workers, medical workers, and why the Moderna is more for residents? Or
I don't think so. I think it was sort of arbitrary just to make it easier, because if you're in that stream, if you're in the healthcare stream, it's going to be easier for you to get access to ones that are being given in the healthcare stream, and vice versa if you're in the community. So I think it's just for simplicity's sake, so that people in the community, as long as they're going kind of to the same provider, won't really need to be that worried about which vaccine they're getting. I want to say one more thing, which I think I stressed in writing, but I think is worth repeating. This is a good time to remember not to guess when you're answering somebody's question. And I know that we've done that at times, especially with testing, and for better or worse. But in this case, I want you to stick kind of to the information you've been given. And if there are any questions that you don't feel very confident about the answer, and all of this stuff that we're going over, this is information that's accessible on the Rhode Island Department of Health website and the CDC. Anything you're learning from other sources, like reading the news and stuff like that, I would really prefer you not giving that information to the residents. Anything you're hearing from friends, so if you had somebody go get vaccinated and they had a particular reaction, we don't need to be telling the residents that stuff. We want to be really sticking to the information that you've been trained on. And if there are questions you don't feel confident about asking or answering, just escalate it to me and Hugo, or say, you know what, I don't have the answer to that question. That's a good question to call your doctor and ask them, or to ask at the clinic when you arrive at the clinic, because there are healthcare providers there. We're not providing any healthcare information. We're just providing the advice that is published widely on the CDC website and for RIDO. And if you're giving information that falls outside that category, you're just opening yourself up to issues, to legal issues. So I would advise you to please not be guessing and not be freelancing when you're answering questions. Anything else? Any hesitations going into the morning or to next week? Well, I can tell you that both the municipalities, Central Falls and Pawtucket, are extremely grateful for the work that you guys have been doing throughout this whole process. We created something here, and we're all a part of something that is unique in the state. And it's an incredible service to the residents of the two cities. And because you guys are doing the work that you're doing, there are a lot of people in Central Falls and Pawtucket who are going to get vaccinated quicker and more efficiently. And so, you know, we are sticking to our mission of trying to beat COVID here. And so I know they're appreciative, but Hugo and I are also very appreciative of the dedication you guys have shown and the work you've put in so far. So thank you for being willing. I know the last few weeks have been a little bit easier, and our lives are about to change tomorrow and next week, and maybe moving forward in terms of the call volume. But we'll be doing a great service for the community. So I appreciate it.
Thank all of you.
Okay. Well, as always, let us know if you have questions or if you need anything. Thanks, guys.